Welcome to the BrightWord Books Podcast, where we shine a light on powerful stories and the brilliant minds behind them. In today's episode, we're joined by debut author and former counterintelligence agent Steve Burkart to talk about his electrifying espionage thriller, The Orchestration. So, with a career rooted in real-world spycraft during the Cold War, Burkart brings gripping authenticity to the story of John Darque. I hope I pronounced that correctly, Steve.
That's correct.
Good. Of John Darque, a covert ops director racing to stop a decades-old Russian conspiracy that could topple the US government from within. If you love high-stakes, cerebral thrillers with real-world undertones, this is one conversation you won't want to miss. So there we go. Let's have a chat. So, Steve, nice to meet you. How are you today?
Today's pretty good. We're hanging in there.
I hope you've got a summer's day where you are.
Oh, yes. It's supposed to get up to 100, but we'll see what happens.
Oh, that's a summer's day, that's for sure. Well, brilliant. Okay. Well, listen, let's get straight in because I think our listeners will really want to know about this because what you've done is you've got your book and the whole story isn't just a wham, bam, thank you, ma'am kind of story, is it? There's actually quite a long plot to it. I mean, what inspired the concept behind the orchestration, especially the idea of that 30-year plot to install a mole as US president?
These kind of operations take place all the time, and they're long term. And the reason being is you can catch people low at a young age and then put them into place where you expect them to go. And then what you do is control everything that happens to them and everything that they do that will get them into the position where you want them.
Right.
In this case, it's the president.
Which is quite interesting, isn't it? So, I mean, you say this happens often. Is this like a kind of sleeper agent kind of thing?
It would be same thing, sleeper agent. Usually they get awakened at a particular time. In this particular case, the incident is where he's aware of what's going on all the time. So it's not like they suddenly contact him and activate him.
Right.
Because he's activated all along.
Oh, okay. So he's actually aware of how his career is being manipulated. And
yes.
Yeah. Oh, right. And I guess agreeing to all of the things that are happening. Oh, wow. Fascinating. Well, brilliant. Well, tell us a bit about John Darque then. I mean, how did you develop his character? And I bet he is, but is he inspired by anyone you knew during your time in counterintelligence?
Not really, but he's a composite. He's ruthless. But he's also very, very calm and quiet. He's very thoughtful about things that he does. And in this particular case, he was put in charge, not knowing anything about it other than the fact that he was with a partner at one time that called him Shadow, which was Chadeaux. And the other guy's name was Spotter. And they were a sniper team, and the other man's name was Casper. But as the story progresses, Darque ends up, after getting out of the service, taking over this clandestine group. So it's up to him to see that the balance of power remains in the world the way it is. It doesn't get out of hand. So that's his mission.
So that's incredible, isn't it, really? Because you're thinking about the whole premise of the book hinges on secrecy, loyalty, and betrayal, of course. And now you're talking about his mission to make sure that the status quo is kept, right? I mean, how did you balance realism with suspense to keep readers engaged? Because I can imagine in your old line of work, not every day was super exciting, right? It's a whole process.
It is. It's for one thing, surveillance is a funny thing because people see this on TV and they see that it's like one car chasing one car. It doesn't work that way. There are a lot of people involved in this, but the whole thing with any kind of a stakeout, they'll tell you that you might get 5 seconds of information and spend 24 hours watching a subject. So it's a very complicated situation, but it's just one of the tactics that can be used in tradecraft to keep an eye on whoever your subject might be.
Yeah, incredible. So you could spend 24 hours and all you're going to get is 5 seconds. I mean, the stress,
Possibility.
yeah, it's just incredible because that means you've got to be completely focused all the time so that you don't miss the 5 seconds, right? Wow.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, yeah.
And
So,
there's so many things to be careful of, like you don't use windshield wipers when there's snow, because when you look, if somebody's looking out the window, there's one car, with exhaust coming out, and obviously it's going to draw attention.
yeah, no, exactly, exactly. You see this in the movies, don't you? You know, with the van that's got a cleaning company's logo on the side, or the telephone company, or the electricity company, whatever it is. You know, there's
Oh
like,
yeah.
and there's 10 guys in the back of it, right? And no one
Uh,
notices for days on end.
Not usually that many, but some.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, yeah, which is amazing. So you've actually lived through that. Then that's been part of your world.
Yes.
Incredible.
Part of my past world. And I'm familiar with the van. So it's again, it's just another tactic, that you can use. So you got to take everything in step by step until you get where you're going.
Yeah, sure. Well, that's it. You got, as you say, you got to use lots of tactics to get to the end, right? Otherwise, I
Right.
guess whoever you're surveilling is going to, as we see in all the movies, they look in the mirror, they stop and do their shoelaces or whatever it is, the anti-trade craft or something. So yeah, oh my gosh, this is really exciting, Steve. I've got to say. Okay, so without spoiling it too much, is there a massive, shocking twist in the book that you can
There
tell?
are there are several,
Ooh,
really. Uh, Number one is with the target becoming the president, his handler. They're trying to figure out who his handler is because they know who it isn't, but they can't figure out who it is. But eventually, there's a mistake made, and Dark picks up on who it is. Yeah, and that was one real big twist. Another one is towards the end where they end up getting rid of the bad guys, and that's in the Alps.
all right.
So I spent 10 years in Europe, and I figure a good book ought to be somewhat of a journey too. So there's a lot of pretty areas, and the way they're taken care of, the twist involved. There's always clues that I put in there that will lead up, and I left no clue unexplained. If it's there, I'll tell you why it's there. Maybe not at the same time, but I'll tell you somewhere in the book where that fits in.
Right.
So it's a puzzle too.
Which is great, right? So that you're actually being drawn along through the whole book because it's not just explaining something, you're actually getting involved with it. So great. Okay.
Yes.
So,
Uh,
sorry.
I have had very few people say that they could read it and put it. They didn't want to put it down.
Right.
They wanted to read what the next page was and the next page and the next page.
Yeah, yeah.
And to me that was kind of enlightening. But it's the way it should be done, I guess.
Yeah, right. So you've obviously done it
Yeah.
right. You've obviously, yeah, that's great. So in other words, they didn't need to do Sudoku or crossword puzzles or anything because they could follow your
No.
clues. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So you mentioned the Alps and you mentioned being in Europe. How do you think that? What other research did you have to do beyond that experience of being in Europe for all those years? To craft the political, I guess, and the intelligence elements, which I guess you're familiar with. But what sort of research did you have to do to align the political side of things, and I guess the machinations of how that works?
I didn't really have to do any research because it's on all TV stations.
Yeah.
I mean, they tell you what's going on. People don't necessarily pursue it, but they tell you where there's problems and that sort of thing. And then you have to pick up. They leave clues too. Espionage is a game. And it's a matter of can you figure out what the other guy is doing before he can figure out what you're doing? So it's interesting in that aspect. But politically, I didn't do any research on it, just what I know and what I've been taught.
Yeah. So it's just how how the White House might work, or the staff and things like that. You can obviously that's reasonably simple to work out, isn't it? And like you say, espionage is, it's not all James Bond, is it? Driving about in cars and going to casinos and all that jazz. It's the real sort of the nitty gritty, as we would say, the minutiae of trying to make sure that you're doing everything correctly, as you were saying with the surveillance as well, to make sure that
Yes.
yeah. So can you tell us a story, a declassified story of one of the missions or one of the surveillance times that you were in Europe?
I can tell you one that I even mentioned in the book, and that was a training mission. And the thing was, you had to get a place, and you were followed. And the target is usually the rabbit, and you have people following him, trying to figure out what he's doing. And in this particular case, I was sitting in a McDonald's in Germany, and there were some people trying to find me. And I knew there were people out there. I didn't know who. I mean, I knew there were people trying to follow me. So when I got into a seat, I just sat there, and two people came in, and I kind of watched them because they were a couple, man and woman. And what happened was, when they brought the bill, they each paid their own bill. And I said, no, I don't think so. And right away, I picked them out, and it was them who was doing it. And I used that scheme in the book to explain how they made a mistake, and that's how the bad guys got onto the good guys was through that mistake.
Brilliant. And it just shows, doesn't it? One simple mistake like that, you wouldn't even notice.
It only takes one.
Yeah. And you wouldn't notice that you made the mistake. That's the thing, right? So I see what you mean. If they're acting like a couple, and then back then as well, if they started to split the bill or go Dutch or whatever it's called, then that would have been like literally a red flag for you. So you served as during the counterintelligence times during the Cold War, which is great, interesting. How was it going up against, I guess, the Soviet bloc and all of the GDR, I guess, and things like that?
I think a lot of it is nobody's perfect. And when you go up against these people, they have good people, we have good people. But the thing is not to let each other know what you're doing. And the thing is, what you have to be cautious of is these little things. Like it used to be, Soviets used to step on a piece of chalk, and that was to show that a drop had been loaded. They don't do that anymore. They just they have other things that they do to warn whoever's coming up behind them, their source, to unload the drops. So it's still a game. It's just your mind against their mind, and it's not a whole lot of shooting and all this going on, except in some countries. They
Right.
do that. They take them out, but otherwise, I mean, we don't normally take them out. We take them, and I think from what I read in the papers anyway, and from what I saw, they just trade them
Yeah.
back again. Let them go on. And that's the premise for the book is that particular thing where he caught somebody and then he released their family. He brought his family with him as cover, and he released the family. But that's how the book starts out, where he knows him, who the bad guy and the good guy know who each other are.
Oh, right. So that's interesting. And then they've got to try and get the proof, I guess, and catch each other out or avoid each other, depending on that. So, I mean, well, that's fantastic. So again, dealing with those people, you working against professionals. You weren't working against amateur sort of terrorists or anything, or were you?
Not against terrorists, because at that time the terrorists weren't a problem when I was in, a big problem. Uh, they were there, but I mean, the Baader Meinhof gang was there, but not very much. But again, it's just you have to focus on just what's happening, what's out of place a lot of time rather than what's in place, what doesn't fit. If 70% of people are carrying umbrellas, carry an umbrella.
Yeah.
If you don't, you're part of the 30% that's going to draw interest. If you go to a ski slope, even if you don't ski, buy a ski pass. Nobody walks around a ski slope without a ski pass. It's just little things like this that you have to consider when you go into this thing.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, that's the thing, isn't it? So being trained in those things really just
Yeah.
and I guess you've got to have some sort of innate ability to be able to do this. And but it being the training helps you to understand what could be subconscious and to bring it forward, so you could be a real professional, right? So that
Oh,
was
yeah.
brilliant. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, do you see any sort of parallels then between the threats that you describe in the orchestration and today's global political climate then?
Yes. There's a lot. I mean, even now in the book, um, you always have somebody trying to, in this country anyway, you have people that are trying to take over the presidency, and it's all for power. I mean, they say they're going to help the people, but they don't. It's all for the power that they yield once they get into this position, and that's not a good thing. So it's what's going on today, and the book itself, or the group of books I wrote, three of them, the trilogy, is basically on current events, what's going on right now. Uh, and the thing is, I wrote it 5 years ago or 6 years ago, so they can say, well, yeah, but all you had to do was copy it out of the paper. Yeah, but it wasn't in the paper 5 years ago. It's in there now, you
Exactly.
know. So
They've been using it as a playbook.
yeah.
Exactly. So prophecy is really very prophetic. Okay, so the book is dealing with infiltration, as we know, as I won't mention it again, but unless you want to, at the highest levels of government. I mean, how real is that threat in your professional opinion? Could it possibly go all the way to the top, do you think, in the future?
I think it depends on the people that are around him, who observe him and watch what he's doing, because they don't always know, but they are the people closest to him, and it's their job to keep an eye on what's going on. But there was one, I guess, representative that was living with a female Chinese spy. Turned out, uh, after investigations, of course, they never did anything to him, and I think they told her to go home and enjoy life in China. But the thing is, uh, there's always a threat. And now that we've allowed all these people into the country unvetted, uh, this country, in my mind, is in a lot more trouble than what they realize. And again, with what you mentioned, sleeper agents and people that are put in place in certain places, could be chemical firms and things like this. We don't know, but they're all there, and it's always a possibility that they can go deeper.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, exactly right. I think with any situation as we've got now in your country, in my country, and everywhere, or a lot of Western countries, or any country actually, that can happen a lot more. I think as well. But I was going to say, as borders come down, borders aren't necessarily coming down, are they?
Yeah.
But things are being allowed to happen, and I think it's probably worth, as you say, keeping this in mind. So let's hope that the powers that be are actually doing that and thinking about it. But let's talk about your journey of writing. I guess you mentioned
Okay.
You mentioned a trilogy. You mentioned how that's worked for you. But what motivated you to finally sit down, stop moving around, and write your first novel? And why this story in particular?
Okay, this is weird because it was my mother. She said she always wanted an author in the family. And I said, okay, I'll write a book. So I wrote the orchestration and she read it. She got to read it before she died. And she read it and I said, well, what do you think of it? And she said, I don't understand most of it. She said, but I think it's pretty good. So I think if people read it and say it's pretty good, then at least that's a blessing. But that's how I started, was just writing a story for her, basically. And then when I wrote it, I said I thought of different situations, and I said, well, I could write this using the same characters, but the whole plot changes, but the mission stays the same too. It's still to keep the balance of power. So, and I wrote uh, two other books, The Master Hacker, which I just happen to have here. I don't know if you can see that, but
There we go. You can see the top of it. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
okay. That's
That's a thick
that
book.
was the second book,
Yeah.
and that was about computers, which is today's topic. What about computers? And they were looking for a way to stop missiles from crossing into countries and going out of countries. There is an explanation in that book on how to do it. Is it possible? I don't know, because I don't know that much about computers. But is it plausible? Probably, based on the technology of today. This is my third book, The Dark Side. This was the last book of the trilogy. And again, I see if you see the whole thing. Um, and that's where Darque supposedly dies, but doesn't. And so he's still alive, as far as the stories go. But that too had to do with oil and Iran and North Korea and all this kind of stuff that's going on now.
Yeah.
But again, I wrote it like 3 or 4 years ago. I forget exactly when it was. But they can say, well, yeah, but all you do is copy the news. No, news copied me, but it became real.
No, exactly, exactly. So you've written those three books so far. I mean, it's got to be quite interesting to move from working in military intelligence or working counter intelligence and writing reports and things like that, moving into writing fiction, completely different, right? I mean, how did you find that transition?
I didn't have a problem with it. There are a lot of people that do. They get so focused on something that they can't let it go. I mean, in sports, they do the same thing. I mean, you get sportscasters and sports athletes, they can't talk about anything but that.
Yeah.
That's it. And I didn't want that. I want to be able to enjoy the world that's around me. So there's a lot of report writing that's the same way with this. There's a lot of correct, trying to write correct English and all of this details, attention to details. As I said, there's no clue in there that I didn't cover somewhere else in the book that would tell you why I put that clue where I did, the way I did, and how it fits in with the rest of the puzzle.
Interesting. So that attention to detail must have made it, quite a long process to write. I mean, how long did it take you to write the orchestration?
I believe it took me about a year, something like that. But there's a lot of, like you say, a lot of detail. When you get in like a surveillance vehicle, you have to pack for dress up and dress down. Like you don't know where you're going to go
Right.
in a car. So if the guy ends up at a big ballroom or something, you have to be able to get into the attire that will allow you into the place. Or if you go down into the dumps, you got to have clothes that will fit into the area. You can't stick out. The rule of thumb was, not too tall, not too small, not too skinny, not too fat. All of this kind of stuff it was you look at somebody, and if they are, you won't know it
Yeah.
because there's nothing about them that peers out. Don't be nervous, don't look over your shoulder, don't do all this crap, that they show in the movies. Just walk like you have every right to be there, which you do.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, just blend in.
Yeah.
As you say, don't.
Blend in.
Yeah, exactly. So someone would walk past you without thinking a second thought, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, nowadays don't dye your hair purple, right? Which is
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
oh, that
Because
makes
they do that to draw attention, so
sure,
unless
exactly.
there was a specific reason for it. Trying to fit into some place might
Yeah,
cause you to dye your hair purple. You
yeah,
don't
yeah.
know.
No, that's true. So how difficult did you find it to fictionalize then all this knowledge that you've got, this technical knowledge, without revealing any sensitive information?
A lot of it is not fiction. When you get into tradecraft and things like this, it's factual from the time that I knew it, and I've been out for quite a few years, and I'm sure that they've changed. But the thing is, uh, you can write fiction, if you know the subject of fact,
Yeah.
and you can convert it, and it'll look good because there is fact in there. But you just change the story a little bit to cover the facts and or to exploit them, whichever that will help you write the book itself.
Which makes sense, yeah. So you're just kind of changing it a bit, really. You don't have to let out any secrets or anything else like that.
Yeah.
No, so that makes sense. Okay. So, I mean, looking to your readers then, I mean, are there any themes or messages that you hope that your readers will sort of take away after finishing the orchestration?
Well, the whole thing about the orchestration is to try to remember that these things are ongoing. They don't see the espionage world as a real problem, and it is. And they have to understand, which they don't, because most people don't have a real interest in it. But the thing is, these things are going on, and it's hurting them in one way or another, either financially or like the Chinese will tend to steal anything they can as far as intelligence goes through one means or another.
Mm.
But that's to benefit them. Now, does that mean they're not smart enough to do it on their own? Probably not, but it's cheaper to steal something than it is to try to develop it from new.
And quicker, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
No, that's true. That's true. So, are there any characters within your book that I guess you personally relate to that maybe are based on people that you knew or something like that, or some characters that you've had a soft spot for, beyond Darque, or even if Darque.
Well, it's not a romance, but he has a female partner who is a member of his group and a team leader. And there's a person in there also that is military, because there's some military assigned to this group covertly. So the one guy's nickname is Animal, and I have a friend who was special forces and that sort of thing, and he had the nickname of Animal. So I wanted that in there, so I put it in there. And he reminds me of the things that the character does that I know that he did, or were somewhat like jumping out of perfectly good airplanes and things like this. So there are some people in there, but not many that I can identify with because they 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 live two lives.
Mm.
I know there was a series out. I led three lives at one time, but they lived two lives, and what's personal is what's personal, and what's professional is professional. So it's hard to get into getting them involved in the story as real people. But the people that I did use, the fictional characters, I know some did some of the things that I mentioned in the book. I know that was part of their job. So, uh, yeah, so they do. I do put some of them in there that I remember.
Oh, fantastic. Well, that's nice as well, isn't it? It's just kind of like
Yeah,
an homage to those people, right?
yeah. Oh yes, oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, excellent. I think you've already mentioned this though, but uh, John Darque, does he go? Does he travel through all three books in the trilogy?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, right.
He travels through all three books. He maintains his position as director or head of this organization, uh, which is called Olympus, but it's referred to as the cave because that's where their headquarters is. It's in a cave, which is really described better in one of the other books as a dilapidated building that's falling down. But the thing is that it's so well fortified that it's actually the second heaviest guarded building in the country.
Yeah.
It's got a chain link fence, but the thing would kill an elephant if it brushed up against it, if they turned the power on full. So, I mean, there's little things like this. But it has mortar that's fallen off and signs that are missing letters. It would draw no attention whatsoever then there's a company that's going out of business.
Yeah.
And it's totally different.
Mm.
So it's almost all computers and medical facilities and this, that, and the other thing. But it's I think that part of it is interesting because it required a little thought trying to throw people off because people are looking for that place.
Yeah.
They figure out that it exists. They just don't know where it is or what it looks like or anything else. And he has to do things to throw them off, so can't move it. So I think that's one of the tricks of the book itself. I think it's a good turn.
Yeah, well, that sounds really great. I can just you've described that building really well. You can just see an
Yeah,
old factory or an old building.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly, with a for sale sign outside or whatever.
yeah,
And
yeah.
underneath, you've got 20 stories of
Yeah,
stuff. All right.
yeah.
Well, Steve, we're out of time. Can you believe it? We could talk for
Okay.
hours. Right? It's great stuff. But listen, that's it for today's episode of the BrightWord Books podcast. A huge thank you, Steve Burkart, for joining us and offering us an inside look into the pulse-pounding world of the orchestration. It really does sound interesting. If you're ready for a thriller that's packed with intrigue, espionage, and edge-of-your-seat suspense, make sure that you grab your copy now on Amazon. And don't forget to subscribe for more author interviews and literary insights. So until next time, keep reading, keep thinking, and keep the light of great stories shining bright. And once more, Steve Burkart, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks for talking to me.
And I hope to talk to you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.